welcome back to this Season 13, Episode 35 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday the 17th of November, and this week we're going to be discussing community news and big tech news headlines. And joining me this week are Mark.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, worn out.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. There seems to be a lot of that going around. Alan, how are you? Are you worn out?
I'm full of beans.
What are beans?
Yes.
So, Mark, why are you feeling worn out?
Oh, winter and everything. But, I've been doing things to help me stop feeling quite so worn out, like installing OpenMW.
What's that? What's OpenMW? Yeah.
Well, there's a game called Morrowind, which, for fans of Skyrim, it's the granddaddy of Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls 3. And there is an open source re-implementation of the game. So if you have a copy, which you can get off Steam or other places, you can install OpenMW and you can run it under Linux using the original data files.
Nice.
Now, last time I tried playing this was several years ago, and while everything launched and ran, there were still quite a lot of rough edges. For example, you'd have characters walk up to you and start saying something, but their lips wouldn't move, which was a bit jarring for a fan of the original game. But these days, it's come along leaps and bounds. It seems like they basically got to the point where they're now just fixing the bugs which were in the original game, to make sure they're not in this one. So, yes, it's been a long time since I've had a playthrough, so I thought it was time to give it another go.
I find this whole re-implementation of a game super fascinating. Like emulation, I understand, like emulating the sound hardware and the CPU and the registers and all that kind of stuff. I can understand that because it's very much you've got a blueprint to work from because there's a processor there and you're doing whatever that processor did. But a re-implementation is like, it's another level because you're writing the thing from scratch based on the behavior of the original game.
Yeah. There was one of these I found actually for the original Diablo game where they'd found in the PlayStation port, they'd left the header files in. Huh. So they ripped the game and then they basically found the signatures for all of the functions that the game needed and could then re-implement it completely from that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Very good. So, Alan, are you full of beans through some sort of product sponsorship or...
No.
Brought to you by Heinz.
No. I've just had a good day today. So
good for you.
Yeah. I've been sharpening my knives.
Really? Should we be concerned? You're not about to put your murder gloves on, are you?
No, I'll save those for another day. You know how I am a massive fan of where the youth hang out on TikTok, and I learn about all my recipes and all the things I need to buy from TikTok. And I have bought things that I've seen on TikTok. I may have mentioned this previously.
Yeah, I think it's some kind of midlife crisis, but okay.
Well, no, it's just, it's a recommendation engine. It's a minute-long video recommendation engine is what I see it as. And I saw a video where someone said this is like the best knife sharpener in the world. Now, I have two knife sharpeners.
Okay.
I have a stone and I have this plastic handle thing, and on the end is a sharpener that like drag the knife through, but you have to hold on to it with your hand and it like shuffles around and it's not brilliant. So I saw this video and I thought, it's just it's flannel. So I then went on everyone's not favorite online purchasing solution, Amazon, and found this item. And it has skyrocketing reviews. Loads of people have reviewed this thing. It's like 4+ stars, 4.5 or so stars, thousands of reviews, and most of them are quite glowing. And I thought, well, I do need a knife sharpener because a couple of weeks ago, I was wandering around the shops and I went into a kitchenware shop and I was looking at all these lovely Japanese steel knives, chef's collection, and they were hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And I thought, one day I'll treat myself to some really good knives. And then I thought, they'll all just get blunt like they do at home, all the ones I've currently got. And then this thing popped up on TikTok, so I bought it. And it is correct. It is the best knife sharpener. Not that I've used every knife sharpener in the world, but of the 3 that I have used, this is the best one. It is amazing.
How does it work differently to the others?
It's got a suction cup on the bottom, a little switch. You put it on the desk and then you flick the switch and it sucks itself to the desk so you don't have to hold on to it. And then you just drag the knife through it. Much like the other one I've got, the handheld one, but this is better. And I sharpen my knives, and sure enough, I've got 2 cuts on my thumbs to prove it, because I'm so used to having dull knives, like dragging a knife across my hands isn't a problem. But now it is, and I've drawn blood twice this week as a result of this, which is a mark of success.
This is good. So I'm also in the market for a knife sharpener. I have been for years, and it's been a vetoed purchase. And I was going to ask if you had a link to this, and I see it's already in the show notes. So anyone listening to this also in the market for a knife sharpener, link to this in the show notes.
£8.
Bargain. Insta purchase. I shall be putting my requisition order in triplicate after the podcast.
They may go out of stock after our show. You never know.
Well, I mean, yes, all of our tens of listeners will snap those up in no time at all, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know. I hear that wireless earphone purchases went through the roof after a couple of shows back.
There were at least 2 pairs bought, yes.
Wonderful. Right, let's get on with the rest of the show. So it's time for some community news. And I see this week that Thunderbird are hiring.
Gosh.
Yes, they are looking for a software engineer and a senior software engineer. The skills predominantly revolve around deep understanding of web technologies. So, your HTMLs, your JavaScript and your CSS, and then a demonstrable knowledge and proven track record with C++. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes, and both positions are remote.
The developer position says that knowledge of C++ is a plus.
Oh, you. I thought this was interesting because, we keep hearing about how Thunderbird is, at death's door, and yes, it is, no, it isn't. And well, they've got some money and they're hiring a couple of engineers to, help maintain the thing. So that's got to be good. I don't know how many engineers they have working on it currently. Maybe these are the engineers that are going to be working on Thunderbird. I don't know.
Me either. Alan.
Philip Roche, who is a canonical employee on public cloud, has written a blog post about using snaps to package old software. And I can relate to this. You know how usually we espouse the virtues of using snaps to get the very latest bleeding edge versions of stuff. Well, it can also be good for preserving things, like old software that you still want to be able to run. And Philip has highlighted some examples of old software. And there's plenty of good examples of this, like Shutter, for example, was basically abandoned, the screenshot software, and was kicked out of the archive. Many distros like Debian and like Ubuntu have requirements for the software to be well maintained before it's allowed to stay in the archive. And some of this software just gets booted out of the archive. So a user who's running one version of Debian or Ubuntu and upgrades after 6 months finds that some of their software disappears because it's no longer maintained and no longer available. And so this highlights the fact that you can repackage existing software up to keep it working. And because even if you upgrade the operating system, the snap is built against a version of core which runs across any release of Ubuntu, it means that it doesn't matter if you upgrade your OS. You still get to keep your applications that you installed on the previous version. So I thought this is quite cool because I do this. I like to preserve old software like this.
And I know we hear a lot about, people who like fast-moving rolling release distros because they want all the latest stuff as fast as it can come in. But it's a failing of sort of desktop Linux to not be supportive of old software. There is lots of software that's come out over time that, some of it's proprietary and, you simply can't install and run it anymore. So it's a valid property of snaps to be able to preserve that old software and continue to use it. I've not published it for obvious reasons, but I've made a snap of Adobe Reader 9 that my wife uses because it supports the secure form signing thing that she has to use as part of her role as a volunteer in the library.
Yeah, I've made a couple of snaps of old games or software that's hard to build, and it's good to keep it around. And some of them have got like a few hundred installs. You know, there are people out there who like these things. Some of them are somewhat academic. There's a snap of Mosaic, the web browser, and Composer.
But then that's software preservation, you know.
It
might be, you know, it means that you can have an example of that software and you can say this is a piece of software history, and you don't have to go and dig out your ThinkPad running Windows 95 to be able to show it to someone.
Right. Or I mean, for open source stuff, you could build it, but then you discover that the things have changed in GCC and you can't build it with a modern GCC. So you have to go and get an old version of GCC, and then you need these old libraries and they conflict, and you have to do it in a container because you don't want to pollute your system, and it just gets hard. And so that's why I quite like doing this, is because it allows you to preserve this old stuff. So yeah, I relate to that blog post.
Next up, Ubuntu Mate 20.04.1 is now available on the GPD Win Max.
What is a GPD Win Max?
Well, I'm sure Martin can tell us.
So GPD are known for their games devices, their handheld games devices, and their netbook style devices. And this is the amalgam of two of those things. So it's a netbook form factor laptop with a built-in Xbox compatible games controller. So it's designed to be a portable PC games system, and it's rather good.
It ships with Windows by default, or is it?
It ships with Windows 10 Home by default, but they contacted me and asked me how quickly could I make an Ubuntu Mate for it, and I said it would probably take about a week.
It depends how quickly you send me one.
Well, yes. In fact, it arrived remarkably quickly. They contacted me and I sent them my details, and it was here 3 days later from Shenzhen.
They're keen.
Yeah. And then I made the image on Saturday afternoon. Took a couple of hours. So it's a rather nifty little device. So it's got it's one of the mobile brands, but it's a quad-core i5 processor with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gig NVMe SSD. And it's the new, is it Ice Lake, I think? So it's 10 nanometer CPU with the new Iris Pro 940 IGP in it. And it's a 1280 by 800 built-in display. And it even has a Thunderbolt port, so you could plug in an external, graphics adapter, and it's got
Wait a minute.
Wi-Fi.
Could you plug an eGPU into this thing?
I'm going to stream that on Twitch later this week. So yes, down by my feet, I have my eGPU, and I'm going to put a 2080 Ti in that, and then connect it up to this little thing and see how it goes.
So this isn't when you said, a netbook form factor, this isn't the sort of $200 netbooks that we remember from years past. This is actually a decent mobile device. Yes,
it doesn't seem to, other than you could argue that maybe the screen resolution, the internal panel screen resolution, is a compromise.
Yeah.
That's mostly because that resolution can be driven. It can run games at that resolution well. If it had a 1080p panel in there, it wouldn't be as good. And it also helps with the battery life, which is I've had just shy of 14 hours out of mine, and that is the claimed battery life, which is kind of impressive. To put that into context, it's got a 57 watt hour battery in it, which is the same size battery as my XPS 15.
Is it very thick?
It's quite thick because it has quite decent cooling in it, because it's obviously got a fairly pokey processor and quite a decent integrated CPU. So it does have two integrated fans in order to keep it cool. And obviously you hold it. It is the thing you hold for the controller. So that makes it warm. Anyway, they're retailing for about $900 unless you were a crowdfunder backer. And if you want to see one in the flesh, so to speak. I did a live stream on Twitch a few days ago where I sort of showed what it looked like, and then I plugged it into a capture card and actually played some games on it, and we did some benchmarking and saw, what the performance was like. It was lots of fun. And I also see that Igor has been up to his old tricks again and has reprised his role as author of the popular Snaps Per Distro, and he's written the 2020 edition of this. So, Alan, I imagine you had a hand in putting this together as well.
No, I didn't. He did this. But I find this interesting. It's something we thought might be an interesting thing to publish a year ago, and we decided to update it to see if the data had changed. And it was just to see, do people using different distros install different software? And the answer is yes. I mean, there are some common things running through. Like, it's interesting that you can see certain applications across Arch, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, Manjaro, and Ubuntu. Certain applications just show up on all of them, like Spotify, for example. Mm-hmm. Whereas others only seem to show up on certain ones. Some of those are obvious and you can kind of explain them away. Like Canonical Live Patch only really works on Ubuntu, so it makes sense that snap is installed on Ubuntu and not on any of the others. But it's interesting how LexD shows up on CentOS, and it makes you think, well, where do people use CentOS? Mostly not on the desktop, mostly in the server environment. Mm-hmm. And if they want to containerize their stuff, they might use LexD to do that. And so I just find it super fascinating to ponder what these people out there are doing with these different distros and using them for different things, because people don't use them all for the same thing. They're not all the same purpose. Like a person who uses Debian isn't necessarily the same as a person who uses Ubuntu or Arch, for example.
Indeed. And Alan, what else have you seen?
I have seen that the desktop team have been very busy. I love spying on the desktop team. They're one of the few teams that I keep an eye on. I don't work on that team, but the reason I can spy on them is because they publicly announce what they've been doing each week, which is just brilliant. Over on the Ubuntu Discourse, there's a thread started each week, and each person just does a little post. It's usually 3 or 5 lines of just what they've been doing. And it's a lovely little window on that team of the variety of things that the desktop team does. And it's not just, we packaged a GTK thing or we updated some packages here or there. There's I did some investigation in this bug and I worked on this piece of new software or, whatever it might be. I find it a fascinating window, especially as most of the entries have links to either bug reports or source code repositories, so you can actually see what they've been doing. And I love this. If nobody else reads this, I love it. So I don't really care if nobody else reads this. I enjoy seeing this and learning about what goes on inside that team, because I think that's one of the things that people don't realize is what goes on inside a distro. What activities actually happen to get that thing out at the end of the day. So yeah, I find it fascinating, and you might too. So you might want to click the link in the show notes.
Yes, I enjoy reading these. Obviously, it's
yeah, I can imagine why you want to. Yeah,
but it's one of the ways that we try and do everything transparently and openly. The other thing that we do, in fact, it happened earlier today as we record this, is we have a weekly team meeting on IRC, which is our bug triage meeting, and it's an hour long, and we go through all of the tracking bugs in all of the supported releases, and we make sure that they've all been assigned and that they're being progressed appropriately. And we'll have links to any that stand out as not being assigned, and you'll see the conversation about, well, who should be assigned this, who's got time to do it, and then we go and update Launchpad, in those bugs. So that's another place where, you can also follow along with the grind of actually tracking bugs going back over, 3 supported releases. We're now into 4 supported releases at this point in the cycle. Right. And that is the end of the community news. So here it is. It's now time for the big news, tech headlines or something like that. And I was delighted to see that GitHub has reinstated YouTube DL.
Yes, it seems like there's quite a story to this this development, isn't there?
Yeah, well, yes, there is. And I'm surprised that it actually required the intervention of the EFF to actually make these points. But the long and short of it is that the EFF are representing the YouTube DL developers, and they put forward a rebuttal against the RIAA's claims. And we'll have a link to that document in the show notes, which is only a few pages long.
Yeah, it's quite accessible.
Yeah, it's very, very understandable. You don't need to be a legal eagle to, pick it apart.
I like that the PDF is hosted on GitHub. That pleases me.
Indeed. So it basically states that YouTube DL doesn't violate any copyright or any mechanisms that protect content, and actually spells out the whys and wherefores of why that's the case in their thing. And then it also mentions that the RII's circumvention claims really pivoted around references to copyright content in the YouTube DL source code, which were in one file and were part of the test suite. So this is part of the integration tests that actually go and drag some things down off YouTube in order to make sure that the software works correctly. So I did see some people at the time sort of commentate that maybe having links to commercial music videos was unwise. And so the YouTube DL team have changed all of their test cases to reference appropriately, licensed content in their test cases. But nevertheless, that wasn't grounds for copyright infringement. So, the EFF completely dismantled the RII's claims.
And it's back. The repository's back online. Yes. I did notice way back when this first kicked off, Nat Freeman, the CEO of GitHub, actually joined the YouTube DL IRC channel and had a conversation with them. So you could see GitHub were invested in fixing this problem when it first happened. They didn't just shut it down and walk away.
No.
And so they've got a blog post as well, which they've titled Standing Up for Developers, which I found interesting as well.
Yeah, they explained why, they had to initially comply. They have to honour these laws. And it was clear from the writing in this blog, they had concerns about this up front, but were following due process. But in any case, and also in this blog post from GitHub, they recognise the many legitimate uses of YouTube DL, some of which they claim include, being able to download stuff to change playback speeds for accessibility purposes, preserving evidence for the fight for human rights, aiding journalists in fact-checking, and downloading Creative Commons licensed videos, which of course is a perfectly legitimate
totally.
Requirement. So it's good to see it back, and it's good to see that drama has resolved itself neatly.
And the snap is now available again.
So, Alan.
ARM-based Macs are upon us.
They are.
Yeah. So recently the Apple announced at their most recent virtual event, high production value virtual event, 3 new devices, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro and Mac Minis, all with so-called Apple Silicon CPUs, as in not Intel x86, but ARM-based CPUs, kind of iteration of the mobile CPUs that they've been using in iPhones and iPads for a few years. And they've started being delivered. So you could order them, and now people have got them in their grubby hands. And Apple made some bold claims at this event about the performance of these devices, saying it's faster than the Intel devices and longer battery life than the Intel devices. And of all the reviews I've seen so far, I've seen 4 reviews, and all of them say, yep, they're right. The batteries last longer and they perform better. They're better at doing basically everything, which I think has surprised a few people because, there's this common belief that an ARM processor is low power, but also, it hasn't got a lot of grunt. And so I think it was surprising to a lot of people that these things actually perform pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, there are ARM processors and there are ARM processors, because what Apple do is they license the architecture reference from ARM, which means they can basically extend beyond it in any way that they like. So it's not just taking an SoC off the shelf and using that in their device. They can integrate all of their other stuff. I was surprised by the reviews I've seen so far, in that the performance claims seem to stand up based on the testing that I've seen so far, at least until you get to 3D GPU performance, and then it's not so great, and they're sort of saying that will be, an area where things improve iteratively in future revisions. I think this is going to, I mean, you can't deny that, Apple are influential. When they make a move, the rest of the industry is sure to follow. I'm sure we will be seeing more ARM-based devices beyond just Chromebooks more plentifully in the coming year.
Maybe.
It's going to be interesting to see what those devices actually look like in terms of performance and what they're running. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, yeah, you can bring out a laptop with an ARM chip in it, but Apple have control of the whole software stack as well, so they can optimize everything to run on that hardware, whereas, it's not quite the same story on more general purpose devices. People might try and follow and say, yeah, we're doing ARM too, look at us, but actually what it runs doesn't deliver in the same way that what runs on these Apple devices does.
Yeah, and you say about, the software stack and the hardware stack. I mean, for me now, Apple is the only proper computer company that exists now. I mean, the last proper computer company, in my opinion, was Sun Microsystems, because they designed and made their own silicon, they made their own software, and they made the computers. And now this is a return to, a proper computer company that does all three of those things in what Apple does. Because IBM are just in the process of selling off their silicon division, I think.
So it's interesting what they've thrown into this. This is just their first generation. So this is only one model of MacBook Air, one model of MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini. They're all powered by the same chip, although there's two variants, a 7-core GPU and an 8-core GPU. And you can either have 8 or 16 gigs of RAM in all three of those models. No doubt we'll see probably later in the year, probably next year, M2 or M1X or whatever it's going to be, the next generation, which either has more RAM or more GPU cores or higher clock speed, which they don't really talk about. And so there may be the next generation of laptops, which are even faster and more powerful and more able to do those GPU workloads that perhaps the first generation aren't. But still, first one out of the gate, it's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it really is. There are a couple of things that gave me cause for concern, though, and that's that the memory is integrated on the SoC. So if that is a model that is followed by wannabes who are also making, devices like this in the future, it really, is another step towards, limiting the serviceability and upgradability of, computers for the end user.
Well, it's already that they're already sold it on the board.
For many, there are, yes. Yeah.
So it's not far off that.
No.
But it's very much like the mobile market.
Yeah. Anyway, not wanting to be outdone, I've ordered an ARM-based Lenovo, which I'm going to be running Ubuntu on. I'm going to join this ARM-based workstation master race, and I shall report back. Mark?
I saw a story on the BBC website, which I thought would be interesting to have a chat about. Martin, you've been telling us recently about the amazing broadband speeds you've been getting since you upgraded to fibre.
Yes, I get on a good day about 500 megabits here now.
So there's a story about people living in more rural areas of the UK and their struggles to get similar speeds to their house, because a lot of areas. I think most of the UK now benefits from some style of what's technically called broadband. But a lot of those, it's ADSL, and especially in more rural areas where you're a long way from the exchange, that can be pretty slow. And there's some stories about people who've been trying to get the companies who manage the infrastructure. So in particular in the UK, there's OpenReach, which is an offshoot of BT, who manage the sort of shared infrastructure which most of the ISPs use. And people trying to get OpenReach and BT to install fibre or just faster broadband to their homes are seeing some quite large quotes landing on their doormat. One guy in Cambridgeshire was trying to get fibre to the premises installed for his street of 17 homes and was quoted £100,000. And there's also actually a government scheme called the Universal Service Obligation, which says that if you get less than 10 megabits per second, then they will contribute the first £3,400 towards getting it upgraded. So someone in Cumbria thought they would take them up on this offer and got a quote for having his street of about 7 homes upgraded and was quoted £150,000.
Isn't this just the economy of scale? Like if you it costs a certain amount to run the cables out to a remote location. If nobody's done it before, you've got to dig up a huge amount of road, lay all the cables, have the engineers do all of that and do all the testing and put the equipment in the exchange and put the equipment at the end of the street and, run cables to all the houses. Yeah. It just costs money to do that. And if you live in city sprawl where the ducting for all those cables is already there and they just have to shoot the cables through, it's easy, and it's an easy moneymaker because as soon as you run a cable into a building that's got 100 dwellings in it, you can make that money back over a short period. But running a cable to a tiny little village to like 7 houses in a street where half of them are probably only going to be on whatever the minimum contract is, it's going to take you 20 years to recover that cost.
Yeah, it does seem like from some of the breakdowns that were given for these costs, the majority of it comes from the civil engineering cost. So where you have to dig up roads and cut down trees and so on.
Right.
That covers more than half of these big quotes because closing a road so that you can dig a trench down it turns out is an expensive thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the cabling was done many years ago when the first cable franchises were set up. Like the area that I live in, there was a company called NTL who did the cabling around here. And there was other companies like Telewest and Bell Cable Media. And like there were loads of little fiefdoms around the UK that did the cabling. And those have slowly, merged and been acquired. And now there's basically 2 or 3 companies who own the cabling.
This story sounds very familiar to me because you may remember I was connected to the internet using a Wi-Fi, WISP provider. And we were in the same position where there's literally a road that runs through our village and people on one side of the road have had fibre from BT OpenReach for years. And if you're on my side of the road, there was no internet for you. So a small independent organisation came in and set up this, wireless infrastructure for the other half of the village. And since then, Virgin have come in and they actually went through and they ran fibre to the end of the pathway of every house on this side of the road. So there's now a technological divide, and where we were the impoverished broadband side, we've now got high speed fibre from Virgin, and the other side have got not so good fibre from BT.
So what's the solution for these people with the big bills? What do they do? Just move?
Starlink.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Starlink is what?
Oh, Starlink is Elon Musk's put 1 billion satellites in the way around the Earth and annoy the astronomers. But give everyone. I did actually see a story about that where early users were reporting 150 megabit stable connections on it, which is impressive considering how it works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Radio. How does that work? And finally, Guido van Rossum joins Microsoft. It's in retirement is boring news. The Python creator Guido has joined Microsoft. He previously worked for Dropbox and Google and retired in October 2019. But he had a very short retirement, and he announced in a tweet, "I've decided that retirement was too boring and have joined the developer division at Microsoft. To do what? Too many options to say, but it'll make using Python better for sure, and not just on Windows. There's lots of open source here. Watch this space."
It was probably a bad year to retire, really. Probably why it was a bit boring. Stuck inside.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, why stay at home on your own and do nothing when you can stay at home and get paid to work?
Indeed. Well, congratulations.
Yes.
Right, and that is the end of the big tech news. And indeed, that is the end of episode 35. Thank you all for listening. Next week, we'll be discussing things that we've been doing during lockdown. We have an extension of love, whatever that might be, and all your lovely feedback. And if you have some lovely feedback, you can send that to show@ubuntupodcast.org. And if you're looking for something to do in these, troubled times, then why don't you subscribe to our YouTube channel? We're very nearly at 1,000 subscribers. It would be nice to end the year with that landmark achieved. And if you're in the market for a fine VPS, then head to bitfolk.com. Right, thank you all for listening, and we'll speak to you again next time.